Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Autism Stories. I'm your host, Doug Bletcher, the founder of Autism Personal Coach. Autistic people are the true experts of the autistic experience, and Autism Stories is where we interview autistic people to learn from their stories, experiences, and get their insights. If you would like to be notified about each week's episode of Autism Stories, we suggest you subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform. We would also appreciate it if you could give us a positive rating and review, as it will help others to learn about autism stories. On today's episode, Neisha Hirsch returns to Autism Stories to discuss being a coach with us at Autism Personal Coach and how her experience as a tarot reader makes her a better coach. We hope you enjoy today's conversation. I'm so happy today to welcome back one of my favorite humans to Autism Stories. Neisha, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me here. It's good to be back.
So the last time you were on Autism Stories was in 2022, and a lot of things have changed since then. But one of those things, if you've become a coach with the organization that I founded, Autism Personal Coach. Why the heck did you decide to become a coach with us?
Well, when I first saw the call for coaches in 2022, I was only about a year out from my diagnosis, and I was still pretty heavily looking for community or trying to talk to more people who were in my position or who had experience processing diagnosis. I had kind of gone back to LinkedIn just to find community, and at the time, I was looking for new work, just to do something different. I had been running a very small graphic design business, and I wanted to do something else. And when I saw the little blurb on LinkedIn, I was like, "Oh, could I be good at that? Could I fit there? You know?" And so I responded. But becoming a coach was probably the best choice I made over the past few years. It's been an exceptional experience.
And you've been an exceptional coach. As coaches, we support people in improving their lives, which often means learning more about, themselves and how their autism specifically impacts them. So I'm wondering what you've learned about yourself by coaching others.
A lot of different things too, depending on the context of my coaching relationship with each client, but mostly that we all do have this sort of foundationally similar experience of seeing the world in a completely different way than the people around us. And I think that a lot of us feel alone. And then when I got into coaching, I was kind of coming to it with that, where I felt kind of like I was, how do I say it, like a singular planet floating around, everyone else's solar system. Like my life was very much about everybody else's experience, because that was the best way I could relate to anyone. It was the best way I could communicate, was to sort of assimilate their experience first. When I started coaching, I was able to sort of build a bridge to my own identity and experience in a totally new way, because I was helping other people do the same thing. And so I was kind of doing it with them. Each client that I had, we would have these discussions about identity and autistic identity. And as I had these discussions with people, I was able to sort of find out what it meant for me as well. I think that was the biggest thing I learned about myself.
So for us as autistic people, there might be someone listening that thinks about becoming a coach. What do you think are some important things for them to consider if they are thinking about that?
First and foremost, I thought about this last night when I was going over the questions. I was like, what would be the most important thing? I think investment would be my number one thing to consider the most. What's your investment? Because one of the things you said to me that made the biggest impact when I first started training with you and first started coaching was that I didn't have to be an authority. And that made such an impact on my ability, because I don't know if it's my interest level or my commitment, I don't know what it is, but I tend to become an authority on any topic that I really want to know about. So when you kind of gave me permission to not know by telling me that, and what that did for me was allow me to reevaluate my investment in why I wanted to talk to people every day, or why I wanted to help people figure out their own lives. What was my investment? And eventually I came to the realization that my investment is literally just in the connection part of being a coach. I love meeting people, especially autistic people who want to discover things about themselves. I love beginning that or opening that conversation up. So my investment was a really big theme for me when I first started. There was also this sense of, do you feel like you, how do I phrase this? Do you feel like you are confident enough not knowing to be able to say, I don't know, let's find out together? That was a huge factor in my mindset when I first started. And it still continues to be a big part of how I think about it now. Even with, even after almost 2 years, and still I have all this experience now, and I'm a lot more comfortable in the environment. I'm a lot more comfortable talking to people, but I still come to it with, what do I not know? And how can we find that out? And I think that was the biggest consideration. Can you do that?
I really like what you said, confident not knowing. Do you think that's just kind of strictly a matter of self-esteem, or are there maybe some other factors that play into that?
I think there's probably some other factors there. Yeah, self-esteem is part of it. Or at least just understanding that you can see yourself differently. Again, that sort of sense of, okay, it's all right if I don't know this. How can I find out, or how can I help someone else find out something I don't know? It's a curiosity thing. I think curiosity plays a huge role in that as well.
One of the most important parts of coaching to me, regardless of the education or experience someone has as a coach, is being able to develop a trust and connection with the person you're supporting as a coach. If this doesn't happen in coaching, I do not think the coaching experience is going to be helpful to the person that is seeking coaching. So in thinking about that, what ways have you found it helpful to develop a trust and a connection with those autistic people that you've supported?
Listening first and foremost. That's the first thing I notice in building relationships, is hearing someone as wholly as possible, as much as you can, for what they're bringing to you. Because of the way coaching is set up, they're really bringing a need to you. Like, I'm in need of something. I'm in need of direction, or clear understanding of setting goals, or I'm in need of understanding my autism. Whatever it is that they're coming to coaching with, if you can't hear that, it makes it really hard to build any sort of trusting foundation with someone. For me, it's always getting a sense of who the person is, independently of my ideas about autism or my personal experience of it, because each of us is very different. We've got the whole of the human spectrum here as well. And if you're unable to hear someone for what they're bringing to you, if you can't hear their need underneath what they're saying, it's very hard to build trust. I also wrote down that mutual experience is helpful. So even though the intention is to hear the person independently of that mutual experience, bringing that mutual experience in once the conversation starts is really helpful in building trust, because when you feel heard and understood, it tends to help you feel safe.
Listening to me is the number one way to build trust and build a connection. And I think listening to people about their expertise, about their lived experience, I think is really critical. I'm wondering what's been your experience in your clients understanding that shift, because I think a lot of time when they go into a professional relationship like this, there's that might not always be the case.
I'm told often that when I let my traits show, when I don't mask as much, that's very comforting and expansive for people, that they can allow themselves to also experience that openly. And I think that's just an aspect of my personality. Once I realized where the mask was, once I was like, oh, this isn't really my preference, I've been doing this because it gets me along. Once I realized I could relax in context, even though it's a professional relationship, I could be more authentically myself as I started to express those things. Like when I do have communication issues, or when my spoken language capacity shifts in a session because I'm experiencing something or I'm overwhelmed or something like that, if I'm open about those things, I've noticed that builds a pretty good foundation for my client to also be open about what they're really experiencing. And that lack of, I want to use the lack of shame over the things that we struggle with can be a bonding tool in a lot of ways. Because essentially in any connective experience, anytime you're trying to connect to somebody, what you're looking for is common ground.
Last time you were on Autism Stories, we talked a bit about your experience with tarot. Have there been ways that you think tarot and all your experience with that has helped you to be the wonderful coach that you've become?
Yeah, with pattern recognition. You know what I mean? It's like I love tarot because of the symbolism and the pictures and the storytelling, and there's a lot about it that's almost independent of the spiritual experience of it that I really, really love. There's a practical part of it that makes me really happy, but the pattern recognition part of it was the quality that came forward the most in my sessions, was that I can see how stories are built and how they connect to people's experience. For the most part, in my experience of humans, people, I see that they're mostly just telling themselves stories. We get through life by building and creating and retelling stories over and over again. And some of those stories are wonderful, and some of them are not so wonderful to experience. And if we don't attempt to take ownership of those stories, it can be really hard to change. And I mean, change is difficult for me anyway, so I can relate on that level too. But the importance of being able to own your stories, that's a huge part of tarot as well, especially when you're reading with clients or you're reading with someone. You're helping them rewrite a belief system, an inner story, a outer situation. It's a conversation. It's a creation thing. It's not so much like, it is divination, but it's not only divination. It can be a tool for self-reflection. It can be a storytelling tool. And all of that is included in coaching. It's all there too.
Now, you're still doing tarot, and not too long ago, you started a tarot channel on YouTube. Can you tell our listeners about your channel?
Yeah, I started this, took me a very long time to get started with this, actually. I thought about it for a while, and I was told often by different people, you should start a YouTube channel. And I think I was just afraid that I wouldn't be able to speak, like that it would be difficult to speak to no one, But it turned out to be a really good practice. And I ended up starting Treya Tarot mostly to see if I could. It was like, can I do this? Can I figure out how to be comfortable hearing my own voice, speaking to a camera instead of to a person? And then it kind of grew from there. As I got more comfortable, I realized that I woke up almost on a daily basis wanting to read for everyone collectively, like just wanting to read, period. Not pick a topic, not read for a specific sign, but just to open cards every morning to see what came through every single day. So I started doing daily readings with the channel. And I think I may shift that at some point, just because of schedule stuff. But the overall feeling I ended up with it, coming from it, was this sort of reawakening of my desire to read more. Like, I want to do it more the more I do it. That was how the channel sort of started growing. And now I have, I think, 51 subscribers, which I know is not a lot, but it's a big deal to me. I get to talk to 51 people every day. And I imagine now it's not just me talking to a camera. It's me talking to 51 people.
Well, I'm one of those subscribers. I'm one of the 51.
Thank you, Doug.
I wanted to go back to something that you just said about reading every day. I'm wondering, for me, there's certain things that are foundational in me having a positive day, a day that I'm not overwhelmed or, things like that. I'm wondering, is reading and tarot, is that somewhat for you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big, yeah. I buy a lot of tarot decks too. So it is also a collection thing for me. It is definitely also about the images and the tactile part of it and the experience of taking an action, even when there's no literal action to take. One of the biggest parts of how I move through my life is when I deal with stress or overwhelm is to have some sort of practice to channel that energy forward instead of letting it spin into anxiety. And I think tarot is one of those things, even though some people experience tarot as an anxiety inducer, for me, it's a practice like meditation or anything like that I can use to sort of focus myself and center myself before I go into dealing with the rest of my experience.
Tarot for me, this has just been my personal experience with it. I will tend to go to tarot when I'm going through more stressful or challenging moments in my life because I feel like it helps me to maybe understand the why I'm going through something and maybe where that could be leading to better moments. And I think it just helps me navigate those situations maybe 5 or 10% better than I normally would.
Yeah, I agree. It also, just like coaching does, it brings a collective aspect to it. So it's, on some level, it's a connective tool. We're not alone. This is how we know we're not alone, because if a reading can resonate with multiple people, if people can take that information and kind of interpret it through their own filters and feel connected to a bigger group of people or a bigger storyline, that can be an incredible comfort. I think it's the same. It's funny because any spiritual thing like that brings that aspect to it. I think it's why people go to church too. It's like, I'm part of a community here. Somewhere on some level, I'm connected to everything else. And that to me is a universal truth that I think we take for granted a lot. We don't really get into contact with how connected we are to everything. And in tarot, because it's spiritual, because it's prediction oriented, can kind of bring that feeling forward for a lot of people at once. Because, when you listen to someone on YouTube, it's someone sitting in their own space alone. You know what I mean? But sometimes those readings, and as a listener myself, I've noticed this, sometimes those readings are so on the money. They're so particular. And I think to myself, how can this stranger across the country in their bedroom reading tarot have any idea of what I'm experiencing over here? And that to me feels very special in a lot of ways. It's like a really good reflection of just how connected everything is.
And lastly, Neisha, how can our listeners learn about you and your tarot beyond this interview and become the 50 seconds subscriber to your channel?
Well, the account is called Treya Tarot, TREYAPAROT, on YouTube. And you can always find me at ATC. I am always here every day, Monday through Friday. And I love it here. So you can find me here. But if you want to find my channel, look up at Treya Tarot. And I will be posting, about an hour and a half. So you'll have a new video to watch soon.
Well, I definitely look forward to that. And as always, I love our conversation. So thanks so much for returning to Autism Stories.
Thank you, Doug. It's great as always.
Thanks so much to Neisha for the conversation. To learn more about Neisha, please check out the link in the podcast description for this episode. We always love hearing from you. I would especially love to hear from you relating to this episode regarding if you've ever had a tarot reading. And if so, what was your experience like? Did you know Autism Personal Coach provides neurodiversity affirming support by autistics for autistics? We empower autistic adults and teens to lead self-directed, purpose-driven lives through our customized life coaching and community groups. Our distinct approach prioritizes each client's unique goals and preferences, fostering a sense of agency and promoting self-advocacy. Our coaches work collaboratively with each client to develop personalized strategies and tools that can help with executive functioning, relationship building, stress management, and much more. We also support parents and partners of autistic people by providing insights and guidance to bridge communication gaps and nurture mutual understanding. With our accessible remote services, individuals from any location can receive the assistance and mentoring they need. Join us today to experience judgment-free coaching rooted in empathy, expertise, and respect for autistic identity. Until next time, I'm Doug Bletcher of Autism Personal Coach. Talk to you then.